I'm just worried about Nico. I don't like the fact that 6 months ago he was rated number 26 on the prospect list, and now he's suddenly number one in what 4 months. I just think he's a flash in the pan, and I think Nolan just has the better overall game. I'm not worried about his injuries.
With our first selection in the 2017 Entry Draft, the New Jersey Devils are proud to welcome, from the Halifax Mooseheads, Nico Hischier.
And I'm just really worried about his injuries. I don't think he's that good of a player. I think Nico has the higher ceiling, and I think because of his meteoric rise to the top, it just shows that he has a better development curve. I just really think we should pick Nico. Nico Hischier. Nico is a New Jersey Devil. I can't believe it. In a good way. Even up until last Friday morning, I was completely on the Nolan Patrick train. But it's kind of weird how the second he becomes a New Jersey Devil, I'm a huge Nico fan. I hate Nolan Patrick. I think he's crap. I don't think he's going to be the best player available. I think Nico was that guy. It's just weird how psychology works that way. I'm kidding, of course, but that's almost what my reaction has been to Nico being drafted first overall by the Devils, is that, I was wrong. I trust the Devils scouting staff. I do think that now Nico is the better choice, and I love the way he's been paraded around New York City and New Jersey. He's like a prized pig, and I'm eating it up. It's fantastic, and I'm so excited for September to start. You have no idea how excited I am right now to have this kid on the team. So this is a bit of an entry draft show. I'm going to be focusing more on Nico and Nolan, because I hate saying his last name, Hischier. And then I'm going to go down the line and talk about the other 8 picks in the top 10. But I'm not going to go too much past that. I just don't have enough time. Actually, I'm a little sick right now. I have a bit of a cold, and I still want to get out a video at the trades. I still want to get a video out about a few other things because I'm going on vacation next week, so I want to get that done. So I'm just going to do top 10. I think that's the most notable. It's really what most people care about anyway, and so we're just going to go there. So I'm going to go straight down the line, talk about my number one man, Nico Hischier. So I'm just going to go with the cons, especially the ones that I felt were cons of Nico prior to him being drafted by us. What I said before was true. He was number 26, I think, back in October. He didn't start reaching the top 3 and then the top 2 until the last couple of months. And that worries me. That should worry anyone who thinks rationally about it, because that just means within the last 8 months or so, which is a small sample size for a prospect, especially at the NHL level, you wonder if that's just a super good stretch of time that he's had, and his actual playing ability is much lower than that. You don't really know. You kind of have to guess and assume that this is his new floor. This isn't his ceiling. He's not, having this outlandish, just incredible spree of 40 plus games and a couple of tournaments, and that he's really a worse player than he looks. You got to make sure that you don't have that type of a player on your hands. And that's how I felt, and that's why I was on Team Nolan the entirety of the year, or at least since the Devils got first overall. So April. I misspoke, since April. And I always felt that Nolan was a safer pick. He's been number 1 for the past 2 years in the terms of this draft class. And he's been hurt, he's been injured, and I was a little bit worried about the injuries until the director of Devil Scouting came out at the Combine and said, we are not at all worried about Nolan's injuries. And so I was okay with that. And so I figured, well, if he has no injuries and he's been the consensus number 1 until the last 3 months, I just think he's a safer pick. But Nico's a bit sexier, and I'm kind of digging it now that he's been drafted by us. I've been looking into him more in depth. I've been more open-minded. I also am very biased because he is now on the Devils. He's not just some prospect we might draft. But I do like Nico, and I'll explain why. So Nico's skill set compared to Nolan's is a little bit different. They're both top-line centers. They're both, pretty big bodies. They're both fast. But Nico was always touted as having this elusive quickness to him that Nolan never had. He's not going to be the fastest top-end guy like a Jonathan Drouin, but he's going to be able to swing by defenders. He's going to be able to cross that blue line, and before you know it, he's going to be behind you and on a breakaway. And all of his highlights show that, which is really incredible. Almost all of his highlights are him on breakaways because he just has that, and he's gone. And that's something a lot of players don't have. And I know Nolan has a better overall game, which is, to me, I like the guy who's going to be the overall, both ends of the ice kind of guy. And I think we needed that in a top-line center. But I'm really, really excited to have a guy like Nico with Taylor Hall on that top line. It's going to be a super fast line. I just hope Palmieri can keep up with them, but I'm sure in due time that line will solidify if that even is our top line. But it's not speed as so much as, and this is a direct quote, it's not speed, it's quickness, which sounds kind of like the same thing, but it's not. With speed, you're talking about guys who can go end to end and then just outmatch the defenders once they're at full speed. Nico doesn't have the highest top speed of the prospects. He's fast. He has a really good high speed, but he's not the fastest. He's the quickest. And I differentiated that before. He's just there in an instant and then gone the next. And I'm just ecstatic to see him play. And now Nolan, he was the safer pick. He does have a bit of a better defensive game. I think he's more of a game controller, or I should say a momentum controller than Nico, whereas Nico has more of that game-breaking factor. So what I mean by that is you're not going to see Nolan completely dominate the game, and I may be wrong, but this is from the scouting reports. He's not going to completely dominate the game from the drop of the puck till the end. But what he will do is show up in the big moments and completely take over a 5 to 10 minute stretch and score a goal or two and get a couple of assists or something. Whereas Nolan has that ability to kind of just control the pace of the game from the start to the finish. But he doesn't have that ability to overly dominate for a certain amount of time. And so it's really kind of a yin and yang situation. They're so similar but so different at the same time, and I hope I'm getting that distinction across. Nolan, two-way center. Nico, offensive center, if you can even put those terms. He's not a sniper, he's not a playmaker, he's just quick. Like that is the best way to put it. He has great hands, he has a decent shot. I do think Patrick has the more dangerous shot, but Nico's quickness in hands more than make up for that. And he does have really good passing. So it's really easy to see why these guys both were so, neck and neck for a number of weeks up until the draft. But I do think that Nico's development curve is actually a bit of a bonus to him now. So, like I said before, the fact that he went from number 26 to number 1 in just 4 months and a handful of tournaments and maybe like a span of 50 games or so, it made me wonder, what if he just had a really good year? Because if you look at a number of players around the NHL, David Clarkson, for example, who scored 30 goals one year at the Devils in 2012, and well, now he's injured, but prior to that, he never ever reached that plateau again. He was a product of the Devils system, a product of being on a team with Kovalchuk and Parise. He will never reach that level again. And I wonder, what if Nolan is having that kind of a year with the Mooseheads? What if he's just a product of a great system, if he's just having a fantastic year, or great Swiss teammates in the international tournaments? I'm afraid of him being our David Clarkson. But I trust our scouts enough, and I trust every other team scouts who actually were starting to put Nico as the number 1 pick in the last 2 or 3 days before the draft, he's our guy. He's the right guy, and I am so excited for even just the development camp coming up. I just want to see him play in a double sweater, and it's going to be fantastic. I've been talking about Nico and Nolan so much that I am already running out of time, so what I'm going to do is just kind of go quickly through my feelings of the next 8 picks. We all know who they are. I don't really need to talk about them so much as prospects, which kind of just go into how I feel about them as a fit for the team. So right off the bat, we got Heiskanen for the Dallas Stars, who is a seriously good puck-moving defenseman. And a lot of people were talking, they made this distinction about him that he's not an offensive defenseman. He's a puck-moving defenseman, which a lot like the quick and speed of Nico, it sounds like they're the same thing. But Miro has this speed and puck handling skill to be a super dangerous defenseman, especially on the Dallas Stars, one of the most offensive teams in the league. And I think this was a great pick by Dallas. I know people were thinking they were going to pick Makar, but I'm really glad they picked Miro. I think he's going to be a great fit, and they've always struggled on defense, and so they might have wanted to pick a more defensive defenseman in Makar or a few others down the line. But if you're going to pick the best player available, which I think you should in the top 3, you pick Miro, and that's what Dallas did. And I just misspoke back there. I said that Miro's game wasn't as defensive as Makar's, but that I actually meant to compare him to Foote, because the number 4 overall pick by the Colorado Avalanche was Cale Makar, and he is not a defensive defenseman. If anything, he is the most offensive defenseman. And again, I do think that Colorado needs that more defensive blue liner, but when you pick the best player left, and once Nico, Nolan, and Miro were picked, you pick Cale, and that's what they did. And he is going to be a fantastic offensive defenseman for the Colorado Avalanche. So the next 5 picks in the draft are actually a bit difficult to talk about. Talking about the Canucks pick, the Buffalo Sabres pick, the Rangers pick, which I do want to talk a little bit more about in depth with Anderson. But these 5 picks are just difficult because they're all centers, and they're really all lumped together. They're all really good, high hockey IQ, fast, skilled skaters. There's really nothing differentiating them without looking at the hours and hours of footage that there is out there of their highlights. But they are all, that's one thing, they are all needed by their teams, except for the Rangers. I don't know what the Rangers were thinking, and a lot of sports media the next day was basically creating headlines such as, what the hell are the Rangers doing? If you don't know, they traded Derek Stepan and Antti Ranta to Arizona for the 7th overall pick. And then they pick a center. I hate to say that I'm happy they made such a lopsided, I don't want to say stupid because I don't think I'm as smart as a GM, but I do think it's a lopsided trade. I don't think Stepan and Antti Ranta are worth the 7th round pick or a 7th overall pick. Stepan's always been one of my favorite Rangers. He's a fantastic center, and Ranta is an up-and-coming goalie. I am happy he's going to have a starting position now in Arizona and doesn't have to sit in the shadow of Lundqvist. But to just pick Anderson, a prospect center with the 7th overall, when you have Mark Stahl, who's barely a third pairing defenseman, you buy out Dan Girardi. I can't talk tonight. You need defense, so you trade a center and a goalie to pick a somewhat decent center, not even a player, a prospect center, 7th overall. It's mind-boggling to me but it is what it is, and maybe he's going to pan out better for the Rangers than Stepan did. I don't know enough about the Rangers farm system to comment on whether or not they have a good backup for Lundqvist, since he's getting up there. He's not on the right side of 30 anymore. He's not going to be the elite goaltender for the Rangers that he's been for the past decade. So the Rangers are apparently still in win now mode, but they just spent all of these assets on a prospect. It's another one of those head scratchers that seems to be constantly happening. I mean, I did win the Stanley Cup on BAGM in NHL in one season without even playing a game, but I still don't think I know enough to really be a general manager of the franchise. But it makes you wonder, how much of a better job could someone else do in that position? It's really, I have no words for it. And with the 10th overall pick, the Panthers selected Owen Tippett. And this was an interesting one. Mainly because the Panthers should not be a team that is picking 10th overall in the draft. They were supposed to be cup contenders this year. I actually talked a little bit about that in the expansion draft video. If it wasn't for injuries, and it wasn't for the revolving door of coaches and upper management in that franchise, they would have easily been in the playoffs and most likely to the Eastern Conference Finals, at least in my opinion. They have a fantastic top six and a really good blue line. But they pick 10th overall, and they get the best goal scorer of the draft in right wing Owen Tippett, who it's just hard to really express how much they did not need this pure of a goal scorer. And I don't know why many people aren't talking about this pick, because he's just going to make an already tremendous offense in the Panthers even better in maybe about 2 or 3 years. So I say the Panthers get a cup within the next 3 to 4 years. I really would put my money on that. They really are flying under the radar. They had a really down year, along with a few other strange teams this year. And I do think that they'll be in the playoffs and pushing for a cup within the next 2 years. So that's the top 10 picks of the draft. I do apologize. I have so many things that I need to talk about before I go on vacation and before free agency that it's hard to really have an in-depth discussion. I try to talk about as much as I can and as quick as the time as possible, and I may slip up here and there, but I do like to make it very natural and not have a lot of jump cuts. So that's my feelings on the entry draft. And like I said in the beginning of the video, I will be doing a video on the number of trades that are still happening and contract signings. Apparently McDavid's going to be getting $13 million for 5 years or $13 million for 8 years, which I've never seen such a huge contract since Kovalchuk, but it makes sense. He deserves it. And I'm going to talk about maybe an intro into the free agency. That I don't know. I have to see how much time I have before I leave. But I definitely will be doing a free agency video once I get back from vacation and once things have settled a little bit, because you do want to give it a few days. I don't want to make a video on July 1st and have someone signed on July 2nd and have to, scrap the video and start over. So I'm going to give it a few days for the dust to settle. And you guys will be hearing from me soon. So that's all for me. I'm excited to see Nico next year. And as usual, let's go Devils.